5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff of Falcon 9, Starlink 4-11. M1D chamber pressures are nominal.
T plus 42 seconds into flight, Falcon 9 has successfully lifted off from Vandenberg Space Force Base, carrying our stack of 50 Starlink satellites to orbit. And moments ago, we began to throttle down the engines on the first stage in preparation for max Q. This is where the vehicle will experience the highest amount of pressures during ascent.
Max Q.
And there was max Q. So we have a couple of events happening in quick succession in about a minute. First up, we'll have main engine cutoff, also known as MECO, followed by stage separation, and then second engine start one, also known as SES1. First up, main engine cutoff. This is where all 9 engines on the first stage will shut down in order to slow the vehicle down in preparation for stage separation. During stage separation, the first and second stages will separate from one another. The first stage will make its way back to our targeted landing zone. In this case, it's the drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You, currently waiting in the Pacific Ocean. And the second stage will continue its journey with the third event, second engine start 1. This is where the single Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage will ignite and propel the second stage along with the Starlink satellites into orbit.
MECO.
Stage separation confirmed.
MVAC startup.
So we did have successful main engine cutoff.
Confirmed.
Stage separation, second engine start of the Merlin vacuum engine, and you just saw on screen that the fairing halves have been deployed from the top of our second stage. We've been flying reflown fairing halves since 2019, and today's fairings are flight proven, and we're going to be attempting to recover them when they return to Earth as well. So as expected, we got some phenomenal footage of ascent. A couple of views on screen right now. On the left-hand side of your screen is the first stage. It's a view from the top of our first stage looking down. It's heading back to our drone ship in the Pacific Ocean, and on the right-hand side of your screen is a view of that Merlin vacuum engine glowing red hot, continuing to carry our stack of Starlink satellites to low Earth orbit. Again, these are live views. In order for the first stage to make its way back to our drone ship, it needs to execute 2 burns. The first is an entry burn where 3 of the engines on the first stage will reignite, and this will help to slow down the stage as it re-enters the upper parts of the atmosphere. The second burn for the first stage is the landing burn. This is a single engine burn that will bring the vehicle's speed down rapidly in order to land on our drone ship. Still a few minutes away from those entry and landing burns. For now, we're enjoying some great views of both stages. The engine that you see on screen on the second stage is a little bit different than the engines on the bottom of the first stage. It's actually optimized to perform in the vacuum of space, being able to produce over 220,000 pounds of thrust, compared to the engines on the first stage, which are
Both
actually
vehicles are on
optimized
nominal
to
trajectories.
perform at sea level. They can produce about 190,000 of thrust, 190,000 pounds of thrust each. So on the left-hand side of the screen, we see some puffs of gas. That is nitrogen gas from our attitude control systems. And on the adjacent side of that, those puffs of gas, you can see 2 of our 4 hypersonic grid fins. These help to steer and guide the first stage back to its landing zone. When we do our landing burn, the center engine can also gimbal or tilt, and that also helps to direct the first stage and help it land as well. So we're just under 45 seconds away from the first of those 2 burns, the entry burn on the first stage. Again, it is a 3-engine burn to slow the stage down before hitting the thicker parts of the Earth's atmosphere. Things continuing to go smoothly for our second stage.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
And you can see on screen, 3 of our 9 engines on the first stage have relit and are currently slowing down that booster. This burn is expected to last about 20 seconds.
Stage 1 entry burn shut down.
And with that, that is a successful entry burn. We have 1 more burn to go on the first stage in about a minute.
Stage 1 FTS is safe.
After the landing burn ends and we attempt our landing on our first stage, we're going to be listening for the call out for SECO, also known as second engine cutoff 1, and then a confirmation of good orbit. For today's mission, we are going to be having 2 coast phases. So after we shut off our second stage engine that you see on screen, we'll coast for about 40 minutes, and then we will actually relight the engine for a few seconds, and then coast again before we deploy the satellites about T+1 hour, a little after T+1 hour into the mission.
Stage 1 transonic.
So we did lose video footage of the first stage. This can sometimes happen as the stage is traveling pretty quickly, but we do hear call-outs that it is continuing
terminal guidance
to make its way to our drone ship.
Stage 2 FTS is safe.
And here's
Stage
a
1
view
landing burn.
of our drone ship. We just heard the call out that the stage 1 landing burn has started. So if we are successful, this will be the 4th time that this booster has successfully landed.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy.
Hearing callouts that we did get the landing legs deployed, waiting for audio or visual confirmation of that first stage, and there it is.
Stage 1 landing confirmed.
Right in the middle of our drone ship.
SECO 1.
That is a successful first stage landing, the 4th for this particular first stage booster. So we did hear call out for successful second engine cutoff of the Merlin vacuum engine.
Insertion.
And that was the call out we were waiting for as well, nominal orbital insertion. So now the second stage with our satellites are in a coast phase. Next up is second engine start 2, also known as SES2, and second engine cutoff 2, also known as SECO 2, which is scheduled to start around the T+53 minute mark. From there, we're going to have payload deploy occur just after the T+1 hour mark. Until then, we're going to take a short break, and we'll see you all back here in about 45 minutes. Until then, sit back and enjoy the space jams, and we'll see you soon. Welcome back to the Starlink webcast. If you are just joining us, a quick recap of today's mission. We had successful liftoff from Vandenberg Space Force Base at 9:12 a.m. Pacific time. Then we had successful stage separation, recovered our first stage after its fourth flight on our drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You, and had a successful second stage MVAC engine burn. Coming up in a few seconds, we'll have the second stage MVAC engine burn, which will be kicked off by SES-2 or second engine start 2, quickly followed by SECO-2 or second engine cutoff 2. This burn is expected to last just about 2 seconds, and so we'll wait on that. Right now, the second stage is just to the east of Madagascar, heading towards Sri Lanka, and there's a view of the MVAC engine that we are expecting to start back up.
MVAC startup and shutdown.
And there was successful startup and shutdown. Gonna wait for confirmation of a good orbit on the second stage. And so after this, we are gonna coast for a little bit longer before we actually start to deploy our 50 Starlink satellites. But while we wait for that confirmation, I do want to take this time to correct something I said earlier. The white clouds that we saw around the vehicle prior to liftoff is the chilled gas above the LOX tank liquid surface that we vent to maintain pressure in the tanks. So basically, we vent gaseous oxygen, not liquid oxygen. Again, we are waiting on
Nominal orbit insertion.
That call out right there, nominal orbital insertion, which confirms that we are in the position we need to be in for the second stage. With that, we're going to take another short break and join you back here just after the T+1 hour mark to catch payload deploy. We will see you soon. And welcome back one final time to our Starlink mission. If you are just joining us, we did have successful liftoff at 9:12 a.m. Pacific time from Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. We landed our first stage for the fourth time, and we're just now coming out of our second and final coast phase. On screen right now is a view of the second stage Merlin vacuum engine. Prior to that, we did see the stack of 50 Starlink satellites positioned on the top of the second stage, and we are expecting those to deploy in the next couple of seconds. And there were those Starlink satellites that I was mentioning. Again, there are 50 of them on top of the second stage for this mission. Earlier in the webcast, we mentioned that these operate at about 550 kilometers in altitude. It actually takes a couple of weeks for the Starlink satellites to use their onboard thrusters to get to their operational altitude. So once we see them deploy from the second stage, they'll kind of distance themselves from the second stage and then, again, use those thrusters over the next couple of days and weeks to get to where they need to get to. So for those that are interested,
Starlink deploy confirmed.
and just as I was saying that, the Starlink payloads on screen, you can see them separating themselves from the second stage, and off they go. So with that successful deployment of our 50 Starlink satellites, that's going to bring our webcast to a close today. I want to thank the Range and Federal Aviation Administration for supporting today's mission. And of course, thank you to all of our viewers and all of our Starlink customers using our service at this time. If you are interested in signing up for Starlink, head on over to starlink.com. But thank you again for joining us and hope you all have a great weekend.